The letter arrived on a dry wind, carried in with the dust that never seemed to leave his porch. It was thin, creased from travel, and marked with a careful hand that did not belong to anyone in his small, stubborn town. He stood there for a long moment, turning it over in his rough fingers as if it might bite. He had sent for a wife, yes, but he had never truly believed she would come. Life had taught him better than to expect kindness, and love was something he had buried long ago under miles of hard land and harder memories. A cold marriage, that was all he wanted. Someone to cook, to keep house, to fill the silence just enough so it did not echo so loudly at night, nothing more. Nothing that could hurt him again. He broke the seal and read the letter once, then twice, his brow tightening. The words were simple, polite, but there was something in them that unsettled him. She spoke of the journey ahead, of hope, of building a life. Hope. That word did not belong anywhere near him. The town watched when she finally arrived. They always watched. A lone woman stepping off the stagecoach was a rare sight, and this one did not look like she had come to fade quietly into the background. Her dress was plain, but her eyes were not. They moved across the land like they were trying to claim it, not fear it. He stood back at first, arms crossed, hat low over his face. He had expected someone worn down by life, someone who would not ask questions. But this woman stepped forward before he could even speak, her voice steady despite the long journey. "So you are the one I wrote to?" There was no hesitation in her, no sign of doubt. It struck him wrong. Most folks hesitated around him. They knew better. He gave a short nod, not offering more than that. Words had never done him any good. The ride back to his place was quiet, the wheels creaking against the dirt road, the wind brushing past them like it carried secrets. He kept his eyes ahead, but he could feel her looking around, taking everything in, the wide sky. The endless stretch of land, the loneliness of it. "This is where we will live?" she asked at last. "That is right," he replied, his voice flat. She did not complain, did not sigh. Instead, she nodded like she had been expecting something even harsher. That, more than anything, unsettled him. The house stood alone, weathered and stubborn, much like the man who lived in it. He stepped down first, offering no hand to help her. He was not a man given to gestures. But she climbed down just fine on her own, brushing the dust from her skirt with a small, almost amused smile. Inside, the silence settled around them. It was thick, heavy, familiar to him. But she moved through it like it was something new, something to be explored rather than endured. Her fingers traced the edge of the table, the back of a chair, as if she was already imagining a different life within those walls. "You said you wanted a wife," she said softly, turning to face him. "Not just someone to work." He stiffened at that. "You will have a roof and food. That is what was agreed. And nothing else?" "That depends on you," he said, though he was not sure what he meant by it. She studied him then, really studied him, like she was trying to see past the walls he had built. It made him uneasy in a way no storm or gun ever had. He turned away first. Night came quickly out there, swallowing the land in darkness. He sat by the window, staring out at nothing, while she moved quietly behind him. There was a warmth in the room now that had not been there before, and he did not trust it. He had thought he was prepared for this, for a simple arrangement, for a life without feeling. But as the wind howled outside and her soft footsteps echoed inside, he began to realize something was already shifting. And when he finally heard her voice again, low and certain in the dark, it carried a promise he was not ready to face. Her voice came from behind him, calm but firm. "I did not come all this way to live like a ghost in your house." He did not turn around. His hands rested on the window frame, knuckles rough and still. Outside, the land stretched dark and endless, the kind of quiet that swallowed a man whole if he let it. "Then you came for the wrong reason," he said. "I came because you asked for a wife," she replied. Not a shadow. Something in her words struck deeper than he expected. He had chosen his wording carefully in those letters. Plain, distant, without promise, a practical arrangement. That was what he had written, that was what he had meant. But maybe she had read something else between those lines. "You will find no soft life here," he said after a moment. "This land does not give easy days. I did not leave easy days behind," she answered. That made him turn. There was no fear in her face, only a quiet strength that did not belong to someone who had lived gently. It unsettled him again, that feeling that she was not what he had prepared for. "Where did you come from?" he asked. She hesitated, just for a breath, and it was the first time he had seen uncertainty in her. "From a place that no longer felt like mine?" That was not an answer, and they both knew it. But he did not press. Everyone out here had something they did not say. It was part of survival. The next morning came with a pale light and a sharp wind. He was up before dawn, as always, stepping outside to tend to what little stock he had left. The land had been unkind the past few seasons. Crops failed more often than they grew, and the soil felt like it had lost its will to give. He heard the door behind him open. She stepped out, wrapping a shawl tighter around her shoulders, her breath catching at the cold. "You wake early," she said. "There is work," he replied. She looked out over the land, her eyes narrowing slightly as she took it all in again under the morning light. It was not pretty land. It was harsh, uneven, and marked by struggle. Most folks who saw it for the first time understood right away what kind of life it offered. "You plan to make a life here?" she asked. "I already have," he said. She did not argue, but he could tell she was thinking something else. Days passed in a steady rhythm. He worked and she learned the house. She cooked simple meals, kept things in order, and asked questions that he did not always answer. There was something steady about her presence, something that did not fit into the quiet he had grown used to. The townsfolk took notice too. Word spread quickly about the mail-order bride who had arrived without fear. Some were curious, others were suspicious. A few whispered things that carried farther than they should. One afternoon, while he was fixing a broken fence, a neighbor rode up, his expression tight with concern. "You brought trouble to your door?" the man said without greeting. He straightened, wiping his hands on his coat. "What do you mean? That woman?" the neighbor said, lowering his voice. "Someone came through town asking about her." A chill moved through him, sharper than the wind. "Who?" "Did not give a name." But he was not just passing through, asked too many questions. Left in a hurry when folks started noticing, he felt something old and familiar stir in his chest. Trouble had a way of finding him, even when he tried to keep to himself. When he returned home, he found her standing by the window, her posture still, her gaze fixed on the distance. "You are expecting someone?" he asked. She turned slowly, and for the first time there was something in her eyes that matched the warning he had just heard. "No," she said, but it was not the truth. He could see it plain as day now, the careful way she chose her words. The way she watched the road when she thought he was not looking. The past she refused to name. "You should have told me," he said quietly. "I was trying to leave it behind," she replied. "Out here, nothing stays buried," he said. She stepped closer then, her voice lowering. "If I told you everything, you might not have let me stay." He held her gaze, the weight of her words settling between them. "And if whatever is following you finds its way here," he said, "it will not just be your problem." The wind picked up outside, rattling the walls like a warning. She looked past him toward the door, her expression tightening just slightly. "That is what I am afraid of," she admitted. And in that moment, he realized the quiet life he had planned was already slipping through his hands. That night, neither of them slept much. The house felt smaller somehow, like the walls had drawn in closer around them. Every sound carried farther. The creak of wood, the brush of wind, even the soft shift of footsteps across the floor. He stayed by the door longer than usual, checking the latch twice before stepping away. It was a habit from another life, one he had tried to leave behind. But trouble had a way of pulling old instincts back to the surface. She noticed, though she said nothing at first. Instead, she sat at the table, her hands wrapped around a cup that had long gone cold. Her eyes moved often to the window, watching the dark like she expected it to answer her. "You know how to use a rifle?" he asked at last. She looked up, a bit surprised by the question. "I do?" "Good," he said. "Because if someone is looking for you, they might not stop at asking questions." Her grip tightened slightly around the cup. "I never wanted it to follow me here. What does not matter much out here," he replied. "Only what comes." The silence that followed was heavy. It was not the quiet he was used to. This one felt like it was waiting for something to break. By morning, the tension had settled into something steady but sharp. He went into town earlier than usual, leaving her with clear instructions to keep the door locked and stay inside if anything felt wrong. She agreed, but there was a look in her eyes that told him she did not like being told what to do. The town was already awake when he arrived. Dust rose with every step, and conversations seemed to dip when he passed. He went straight to the general store, where the owner leaned on the counter, watching him with interest. "You hear about the stranger?" the man asked. "I heard," he replied. "Folks are talking," the store owner said, "saying he asked about your place more than once." That made his jaw tighten. "And no one thought to send word sooner?" The man shrugged. "You keep to yourself. People figured you preferred it that way." That was true, but it did not make things easier now. On his way back, he stopped by the edge of town where a few riders were gathered. They spoke in low tones, glancing toward the road that led out into the open land. One of them nodded at him. "If trouble is coming your way, you best be ready," the rider said. "Out here, no one else will fight your battles for you." He knew that already. He had always known. Back at the house, she was not where he had left her. The door was closed, just as he had told her. The latch was still in place, but inside the room felt different. The air was colder, the kind of cold that came from worry rather than weather. He found her outside, near the back of the house, standing by the old fence. She had not wandered far, but far enough to make his chest tighten. "I told you to stay inside," he said, sharper than he meant to. She turned, her expression calm but firm. "I needed air, you needed safety," he corrected. "And hiding inside does not give that," she replied. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You do not understand this land yet. If someone is watching, they will see everything." Her gaze held his. "Then maybe it is time you tell me what you know about being watched." That stopped him. She had seen more than he realized. The way he checked the horizon, the way he listened before speaking, the way he never fully relaxed. These were not habits of a man who had always lived a quiet life. "We all have pasts," he said. "Yes," she answered. "And some of them do not stay buried." For a moment they stood there, two strangers bound by an agreement that had already grown more complicated than either of them expected. A sound broke the stillness. Distant but clear enough, hoofbeats, both of them turned toward the road at the same time. A figure appeared on the horizon, riding slow, deliberate, like someone who knew exactly where they were going. Her breath caught just slightly, but he noticed. "That is him," she said under her breath. He did not ask how she knew. He could see it in the way her posture changed, the way her steady calm gave way to something tighter, more guarded. "Inside," he said. But she did not move. The rider came closer, the dust rising behind him like a trail that could not be erased. And as the distance closed, the quiet life they had both tried to build began to crack in a way that could not be undone. The rider did not hurry, and somehow that made it worse. A man in a rush could be desperate. A man who took his time was certain. Certain of where he was going and certain of what he would find when he got there. He stepped slightly in front of her without thinking, placing himself between her and the road. It was not a grand gesture. It was quiet, almost instinctive, but she noticed. For the first time since she had arrived, something in her expression softened, just for a moment. "You should go inside," he said again, more controlled this time. "If he came for me, then hiding will not stop him," she replied. "No, but it might buy time," he said. She hesitated, and he could see the fight in her. She was not the kind of person who stepped back easily. That much had been clear from the day she arrived, but this was different. This was not about pride. This was about survival. The rider drew closer, now near enough that the shape of him was clear. Broad shoulders, steady posture, a face that carried the look of a man who had spent too much time on the road and not enough time forgetting anything. His eyes were fixed straight ahead, on the house, on them. "You know him," he said quietly. She nodded once. "From before, that is not much of an answer." "It is all I can give right now," she said, her voice tightening. He took a slow breath, measuring the distance, the timing, the weight of everything that could go wrong. This was not how he had planned things, not even close. He had wanted a simple life, a quiet arrangement, a cold marriage with clear lines and no complications. But somewhere along the way, that had changed. The rider finally stopped a short distance away, his horse shifting beneath him as the dust settled. For a moment no one spoke. The air felt stretched thin, like it might snap if anyone pushed too hard. "Well," the man on the horse said at last, his voice carrying easily. "Looks like I found you." She stepped forward before he could stop her. "You should not have come." The man gave a small, almost amused shake of his head. "You always were stubborn." He did not like the way they spoke. Not the familiarity, not the weight behind their words. It told him there was more between them than she had shared. "You are on my land," he said, his voice firm now. "State your business." The rider's gaze shifted to him, studying him with a calm that felt too sharp. "I suppose you are the husband, something like that," he replied. "That is a bold choice," the rider said, "taking in someone without knowing her story." "I know enough," he said. She glanced back at him then, a flicker of something in her eyes. Not quite fear, not quite regret. Something more complicated. "You do not," she said softly. The rider swung one leg over and stepped down from his horse, boots hitting the dirt with a steady sound. He did not reach for any weapon. He did not need to. His confidence carried its own kind of threat. "I am not here to cause trouble," he said, "but I am not leaving without her." The words hung heavy in the air. "You do not get to decide that," she shot back. "Do I not?" he replied. "You left without settling things. That tends to follow a person." He watched her closely now, seeing the way her shoulders tensed, the way her hands curled slightly at her sides. Whatever she had run from, it was not small. And it was not finished. "What does he want?" he asked her quietly. She did not answer right away. Instead, she took another step forward, putting more space between them as if trying to hold the line herself. "I made a choice," she said, her voice steady again. "I am staying." The rider's expression shifted, just slightly, not anger, not yet, something colder. "Choices have consequences," he said. "And so does chasing someone across half the country," she replied. The wind picked up again, stronger this time, pulling at clothes and carrying dust between them like a barrier that could not quite hide what was coming. He felt it then, clear and sharp. This was the moment everything would turn. Not just for her, but for him too. He stepped forward, closing the gap she had created, standing beside her instead of in front of her. "She stays," he said. The rider looked between them, measuring something in silence. Then, slowly, a faint smile touched his face, but it did not reach his eyes. "Then I suppose we have a problem," he said. And in that instant, the quiet life they had tried to build stood on the edge of breaking, with no clear way back. The air held still after his words, like even the wind was waiting to see what would happen next. The rider's faint smile faded, replaced by something more serious, something that carried the weight of unfinished business. "You always did have a way of making things harder than they need to be," the rider said, his voice calm but firm. She stepped forward, her chin lifting just slightly. "No, I am finally making things right." He watched her closely now, really watched her, and for the first time he saw it clearly. This was not just a woman running from her past. This was someone who had decided to face it, even if it meant standing in the middle of a storm. "What is this about?" he asked, his voice low but steady. She took a breath as if she had been holding it for a long time. "I worked for him," she said, nodding toward the rider. "Not by choice at first. It was the only way to survive where I came from. But over time, I realized I was helping him take from people who had nothing left to give." The rider did not interrupt. He simply stood there, listening. "I tried to leave once before," she continued. "He found me, said I owed him. Said no one walks away from him without paying a price. And now?" he asked. "Now I chose something different," she said. "I chose a new life." "A real one," the rider exhaled slowly, his gaze shifting between them. "You left without settling your debt," he said. "That does not just disappear." "I do not owe you my life," she replied. "Not anymore." Silence stretched again, but this time it felt different. Less like a threat, more like a decision waiting to be made. He stepped forward, his presence steady beside her. "Whatever you think she owes, you are not collecting it here," he said. The rider studied him for a long moment. There was no fear in his eyes, but there was calculation. The kind a man makes when weighing risk against reward. You are willing to stand for her? He asked. Yes, he answered without hesitation. That seemed to settle something. The rider glanced around at the land, the worn house, the quiet that stretched in every direction. It was not much by most standards, but it was honest, hard, but honest. She always did have a way of surprising me, the rider said quietly. Walking away from everything like that? It was not easy, she replied. I imagine not, he said. Another long pause followed, but this one felt like the storm was beginning to pass. At last, the rider reached for his horse, resting a hand on the saddle. You could have run farther, he said. Gone somewhere I would not think to look. I did not want to spend my life running, she answered. He gave a small nod, almost like he respected that. Then I suppose this is where your story changes. It already has, she said. The rider looked at her one last time, then at the man standing beside her. Something unspoken passed in that glance. Not friendship, not forgiveness, but an understanding. Take care of what you have built, the rider said. It does not come easy out here. With that, he mounted his horse and turned back toward the open land. No rush this time, no lingering threat. Just a man riding away, leaving behind something that no longer belonged to him. They stood there until he was gone from sight, the dust settling slowly back to the ground. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then she let out a breath she had been holding for far too long. Her shoulders eased, the tension finally slipping away. It is over, she said softly, as if testing the words. He nodded. Looks that way, she turned to him then, her expression different now. Lighter, but also uncertain in a new way. You did not have to stand with me. Yes, I did, he said. Why? He thought about that for a moment. About the letter, the quiet life he had planned, the cold marriage he thought he wanted. Because somewhere along the way, this stopped being just an arrangement, he said. A small smile touched her lips, warm and real. I was hoping you would say something like that. He let out a quiet breath, almost a laugh, though it felt unfamiliar. Do not expect too many soft words from me. I do not need many, she replied. Just honest ones. The wind shifted again, but this time it felt different. Not harsh, not restless. Just part of the land, part of the life they were building. They walked back toward the house together, side by side. The same house that had once felt empty now held something more. Not perfect, not easy, but real. Out there, where the land was tough and the days were long, they had found something neither of them had expected. A love that was not quiet or simple, but strong enough to stand its ground. And for the first time in a long while, the future did not feel like something to endure. It felt like something worth holding on to.